Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. With me today I'm joined by Brandon Chase and his mother, Pam Davis, and he has an absolutely amazing story. Brandon and I had an opportunity to meet each other at the podcast summit where he told me about an accident that he was in quite some time ago, but he has managed to beat the odds, and I would love for him to share his story. And he was kind enough to come on his birthday. So happy birthday, Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
welcome.
Lisa.
You're welcome. So, Pam, Brandon, tell our listeners what exactly happened with Brandon, because this is a drunk driving car accident, and it's a twist. And it's a twist of the actual story, because even though we focus heavily on the trades on my podcast, we also talk about addictions and things that happen. And so the twist with Brandon was that it was the driver of the vehicle that he was in that was actually impaired, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, he was, yeah. He lied to me, apparently. I don't remember that day, but yeah.
So on June 25th, 2015, which is almost 11 years ago, Brandon was on his way to a paintball. He was on his way home from a paintball outing they had attended on a Saturday afternoon with his stepbrother for his bachelor party. Coming back from the party, Brandon ended up in the car with the driver who, unbeknownst to anybody, had been drinking, and he was over the limit. And on their way home, there was a stoppage in traffic, and Brandon's driver decided to do a U-turn on the highway, and an oncoming SUV hit them on Brandon's side of the car, traveling at highway speed. So Brandon was airlifted to the Foothills Hospital in Calgary by Stars Air Ambulance, and he sustained life-threatening injuries. Basically, we were told not to expect him to even survive his injuries.
The first surgery that they have, it was self-bleeding.
Yeah, so he ended up in the
not again.
Coded on his way to the hospital, just as he was reaching Foothills Hospital. He was in a code situation, which is basically he had no blood pressure. And so he had arrived just in time for them to get him into an interventional operating room where they were able to stop the bleeding at that time, and then deal with all of his other injuries, put him in ICU, and basically monitor him until they were able to continue to do the surgeries that were required to help save his life, basically.
Now, Pam, were you in Newfoundland at the time?
I was in Newfoundland, and my husband and I, so we're 3.5 hour time difference. So we were later in the evening, and I had just gotten back from my week of work. I was working out of town, had returned to our house for a weekend off, and just starting a week of vacation. And we had prepared our supper, and we're just about to sit down to eat, and the phone started to ring, or the phone rang, I should say, and it was my husband's son, my stepson. So I just said, well, it's Jason. We'll call him back later. And we ignored the phone call at that time. We were going to call back later. And within a matter of minutes, my phone was ringing, my husband's phone was ringing, and my daughter was FaceTiming us from Australia. She had heard what had happened. And then I, of course, knew something serious was up, answered the phone and spoke with Jason, and he filled us in on what had happened. Brandon was on his way to the foothills, he said, and it does not look good. He said it's, they're not expecting him to survive. So with that information, I quickly got on the phone, booked the next flight we could get out of Newfoundland, and that was the following morning, because at this point now it was about 9, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock Newfoundland time. We were able to fly out in the morning, direct flight to Calgary, and the last word we received before we got on the plane, I'd spoken to a surgeon who had Brandon in the OR for several hours. And what they did basically was just locate where the bleeding was, stop the bleeding, and left his abdomen open overnight. They just had it packed so that they could,
bring down
go back
swelling
in the next day, right?
Yeah.
Well, just to go back in the next day to see what needed to be done, to see where the bleeder was and what they needed to do inside there. In the meantime, he had several other injuries too that they had to deal with. But so when I spoke to the surgeon just before we got on the plane, she said he is still alive. He's going to ICU now, but the prognosis is not good. His outlook is not good. We did not expect him to survive. And with that information, I got on the plane to fly out, and it was the longest flight of my life. By the time we arrived, I had two friends waiting at the airport, and as soon as they arrived, actually while we were on the flight, one of the flight attendants offered to call the hospital to see what the situation was and to get an update. And I did not want that. I did not want to fly. If I knew something had happened and I was on that plane, I didn't know how I would survive the flight. So I thought, I just want to wait. I'll get there. I can't do anything from here, so I'll just wait till we arrive. So when I arrived, two of my friends were waiting on the other side to meet me. And as soon as I got off the plane, by the look on their faces, I knew he was still alive.
Pam, what an emotional story for you as a mother. Like, I'm even welling up. I'm like, oh my God, like as a mother, how terrifying. Like that must have been
horrible.
The longest flight ever.
Longest flight
for your
ever.
son.
We went to the hospital, and fortunately I had good friends in Calgary, and they did the night watch with Brandon. They were there overnight while he was in the operating room, sending us updates. And then when he was in the ICU, my friends were there in the waiting room getting updates, and they were just there in attendance while I couldn't be there. And so once we arrived, sorry?
No, your story is just so emotional because I'm a mother of a son and a daughter. So I'm just like, I can't even imagine what you went through. Like, this is not just Brandon's story. It's yours too.
Well, the interesting thing, Lisa, is I used to work at the Foothills Hospital many years ago. And I worked, back then I worked in the cardiac ICU, which was next door to the intensive care unit on the 10th floor in the Foothills. And there were nights when we would help our colleagues in ICU with their patients. So, you would go and you would hear the story of these young people who'd been in these, fatal car accidents or catastrophic accidents. And I remember back in those days thinking, wow, I could not ever imagine being in that situation. And finding myself in that situation was just unimaginable. Anyways, when we were at the hospital, we were, once we arrived and spoke to the intensivist, Brandon, again, he was still alive, but he was in a coma. And we were advised that, his brain injuries were very severe. He had multifocal brain injury, and that he likely, that first of all, it was just a wait and see that, that he would survive over the next 72 hours. And from there, basically they didn't know what the outcome would be, but based on his MRI and the pictures they had, the CAT scans and the MRIs, they said that his outcome was grave and that he likely would not be any more than in a vegetative state should he survive. So that was what we had to take away with us.
Surprise!
Surprise.
They were wrong, hey, Brandon.
So, you just don't know where it's going to go, right? I mean, he was several weeks in a coma, and then when he eventually, he was discharged from the ICU after a couple of weeks and put on the step-down trauma unit in the McKay Tower. And he stayed there for several more weeks, semi-conscious but not awake, not responding, until I think it was late August. That car crash happened in late August, when he started showing signs that he was in there and that he was, hearing us. He started to show signs that, but it took quite a long time. And then from then, at that point, they were getting ready to place him in long-term care because they just were not thinking he was going to be able to do any rehabilitation. And then he started to show signs he was awake, and things happened really quickly. At this point now, he had lost a lot of weight. He's a 6'5" man, and he was down to 134 pounds. That was his lowest weight. So he was skeletal. All you could see when you looked at him was big eyes on his emaciated frame. So anyways, it was a lot of work for him to come back from what he had been through. One of his injuries was what they call an atlanto-occipital dislocation. And that is where the ligaments of the neck are separated from the base of the brain. So basically what could happen in that instance is could have, if you're not managed properly or moved in the wrong way, you could develop a spinal cord injury if the neck isn't protected. So fortunately, for really amazing frontline management, that Brandon was able to survive that injury, because most people do not survive that particular injury. So he's got the top 3 vertebrae of his neck fused they're pinned together basically, right, to hold that. That's, that will never come out. That hardware will never come out.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I have a little brother whose back is fused too, so I totally understand what's all entailed in that. Now, so Brandon sent me a lot of material in terms of what had happened, and one of the journalists had written something along the lines of basically, virtually a type of what you're talking about with where the muscles had kind of come apart, was like a type of decapitation, but not quite.
It's like an internal decapitation. That's correct. It's like without cutting off your head, the ligaments are separated. So it's like a decapitation, right?
And when I read that, I was just like, and then just to see how many places that you've spoken to the news and to other people in and around, like I commend you for telling this story, because technically, Pam, you're somewhat reliving it every time you tell it, those emotions, what you went through. And that can't be easy, but it is a form of advocacy that you do for your son and for others out there that go through something similar, that it wasn't just a drunk driver that hit your son. It was a sober driver that hit your son. It was the person driving the vehicle. And a lot of people forget to talk about that. They always talk about the person that was drunk in the other vehicle or that was inebriated. And it's unfortunate. And I'm sure that person, I want to believe that person that was driving with Brandon is remorseful and I don't know. Maybe you can touch on that of what happened there, because that's a really hard place to be, because that was someone he knew. That was someone who...
Well, it was somebody Brandon didn't know that young fellow. In fact, it was an acquaintance of Brandon's, other people who were attending the bachelor party. Yeah. So we really didn't know anything about him. It turns out that he did have a history of drinking and doing drugs as well. Eventually we find this out later, but at the time we did not know. And quite honestly, I have not followed up with his story. All of my focus was on Brandon at that time and how hard we had to work to make him better. For me, having any negativity towards that person would have been counterproductive, because it just would have taken away from my presence at Brandon's bedside.
I saw him one time at the courtroom in Calgary. So one time,
and we did have to be in his presence in the courtroom. We did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did he seem remorseful?
He did say he's remorseful, but I was too angry and I threw panties at him. Conor McGregor.
So Brandon had this with Brandon's brain injury. One of the side effects of his brain injury is he has what you would call perseverative behavior. So you kind of focus on something and you focus on it and focus on it. And Brandon was totally focused on his drunk driver and how he wanted to get back to somehow, get at him.
Get revenge,
I guess, in a way. So he decided, Brandon likes to tell this story. I'm not proud of this story, but he decided he was going to do a Conor McGregor move, he called it. So he wanted to get a pair of red women's underwear and give it to this young man in the courthouse, basically saying, here, this is for your bum life, I guess is what it was all about. Anyways, Brandon told me about his plan to do this, and he went to Victoria's Secret, picked up a pair of women's underwear, had it in his room. I took the underwear, took them away, hid them. Brandon went out, bought another pair. I found them. I took them away and hid them. But unfortunately, the last time he bought them, I did not find them. So he went to the courthouse with this underwear when just after the hearing, and he actually threw them at this young man. And a reporter in the courtroom happened to be there and wrote a story about it. So it was kind of not our finest moment, but it was. And after that, Brandon, he let go of the whole, so once he had done that, this guy was no longer on his mind and no longer plaguing him, but he would get so upset.
He needed to do that then.
So he needed to do that. And I understood that eventually, right? But even though at the time it was like, okay, you don't.
They named my brother my handler. They named my brother my handler in the article. It's a brother. So he's not my handler on my phone. He's my handler, not Jason, my handler.
Well, I can tell that there's still quite a bit of fun personality in Brandon. I feel like the accident may have slowed him down a little bit, but not much. He still tries to do all the things I think he once did. He's come a very far way in what he's had to go through. And he needed to do, for his psychological and emotional path forward, he needed to throw the red underwear. And you know what? Power to you. And it's funny because I do know what he's referencing, so it is quite funny.
Yeah.
So your idea won't escape many people, Brandon. So
Brandon, he always had a sense of humor, and even when in the early days when he was awakening, when the staff would, ask him questions, he would have a musical reference. And at the time, his speech was he was just relearning how to speak again because he has dysarthria, which is basically all the muscles of all of his speech muscles do not work properly. So it's a lot of effort for him to articulate his words. So, but in the early days, he hadn't learned that yet. He had not relearned that. And I remember the staff would come in and ask Brandon, "So Brandon, which way do you want to turn?" Because he could not move. He was totally unable to move his body. So he said, "Do you want to turn to the window or the wall?" And Brandon would say, "Window, wall." And he'd say this over and over again. That song,
To the window.
And to the wall. Yes. And I just thought, so first he'd say window and then he'd say wall. So some of them would be confused as to where he wanted to turn. And then they realized, especially the younger staff, oh, he's referencing that song, Window, the Wall. Right? I didn't know the song,
Brandon.
but it was like, so even from those early days, he was, he had his humor in there, and that's kind of gotten him through a lot of difficult times, really.
I can tell because when he was chatting with me and a few others, I could tell, because some people get taken back by Brandon's speech, but I was just like, oh, he's funny. He's being sarcastic. You can tell.
Yes.
And I'm like, he's got quite the character. And they're like, and they just kind of looked at me and they're like, yeah, I didn't catch that. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's just being sarcastic. He's funny.
Yeah. And not everybody gets it, and not everybody appreciates it, because, some of the humor is not, necessarily in another person's taste, right? So, but he's always looking for that humorous side of things.
Yes, I could tell. That's why
it's not always appropriate. Sometimes he'll do things that are not appropriate, and then it's,
You can tell that Brandon is all there. There is nothing, like when I got a chance to talk to him, he is 100% still the person he was before the accident. He's just got all the accident did was slow down how fast he could do that, but he's still like Brandon, the person that
this disinhibition. Yeah, he's got disinhibition. So sometimes, you may think something in your head, and you won't necessarily say it because maybe it's inappropriate. But with a person who has disinhibition, anything that comes to their mind is fair game to say. They'll say whatever is on their mind, even those things that you want to keep.
Real honest, Brandon.
Yeah. This is a Stars. Let's Rain from Stars. They rescued me.
They rescued you.
Stars, yeah, Let's Rain.
It's made from titanium.
More in the camera.
Made from titanium. Can you see?
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a ring. And you got it from Stars?
Yeah.
So we went back to the base camp. Yeah. We went back to the base camp several months after Brandon's survival. And the nurse, the ICU nurse, and the paramedic who were on Brandon's rescue mission were at the base camp to greet us and show us around. And we went onto that little helicopter, and they showed us where he was resuscitated. That small space. There was Brandon on a stretcher, 6'5" Brandon, an ICU nurse, a paramedic, a doctor. There was a resident doctor on there, and a pilot and co-pilot up front. I don't even know how they managed to perform what they needed to do while they were, flying in that small space. And they had to do quite a lot. It was not a straightforward transfer. Brandon needed blood on board. Brandon's lungs were filled with blood. At one point, they had to actually do a finger thoracotomy right on the plane so that they could actually get air in his lungs. All these things happened while he was, being transferred from Cochrane to the foothills. Anyway, it was so we were at the base camp, and they presented him with this survivor's ring, the Ring of Life, and it's pretty emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. How cool was it to meet the people that saved your life, Brandon?
Pretty cool. They were superstars in my eyes. pretty cool, right? I'm grateful. If my car crashes in Newfoundland, I'll be dead quite frankly because there's no stars or first responders and I'm not in Newfoundland.
Not to that degree.
Yeah.
That would have gotten him. He would not have been safely transferred by road ambulance had there not been an air ambulance available. He would not have survived because time was certainly of the essence, and also the things that they could perform on STARS air ambulance would not have been something that could have been performed on a road ambulance. They just couldn't have done that.
True, because it's just paramedics, right? Whereas in STARS, they have actual specializing, like the ICU nurse and the resident doctor. Yeah.
Yes, those two key players right there, and the paramedic. So three of them. I mean, they just worked to. What they did was heroic, really. They really did that frontline management. Yeah, and
I got to be honest. You guys are making me feel better because I donated to STARS for years because I thought they're such an essential service, and
they are.
You need to have STARS air ambulance because they're the ones that when you are somewhere that you can't get to, the ambulance can't get to you fast enough, or you're somewhere secluded, it's STARS air ambulance. It's going to airlift you to get you to safety, right?
And if there's nobody available, if there's not a helicopter available, then you're still at a loss. We were lucky that there was a helicopter available on that particular evening, right? Because, if there hadn't been, again, it just would have not had the same outcome.
Am I the first person to interview that got arrested by STARS?
Sorry, what's that, Brandon?
Am I the first person that you interviewed?
Yes, you're one of the first survivors I've talked to for STARS. Yes, you are.
Surprise.
Absolutely.
So Brandon does some advocacy himself. Yeah, he's gone back to Foothills Hospital and spoken to the nursing staff there in the ICU following his car crash. He went back on his 10th anniversary, actually. He was invited back by the manager there, and he spoke to several staff members, and they were very delighted to see him come back, to see him walking and talking. And, they said a lot of times once a patient leaves ICU, they never know what happens to them. So for them, it was really rewarding to see him walk into that classroom and speak.
100%.
Yeah. So that was good. He's also spoken to high schools about the perils of drinking and driving, and how his life has been hugely impacted. Could have been a whole lot worse. He may not have been able to be here to tell his story, but I think going into schools and speaking to young people is very impactful for them to see somebody who has survived and to hear what he has gone through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, Brandon, all of those first responders that were there that helped you from the moment that call came in and STARS landed and all those people that transported you, that took care of you, your surgeons, you are the reason, you are a walking reason why they do what they do. Okay. They don't always get that. They have just as many losses as they do saves, but your situation was dire. So to see you walk and talk is the reason. You give them hope that there's reason for them to do what they do.
And Lisa, that is exactly what they said. One of our paramedics in particular, he said, we really did not think Brandon would survive. We were working our hardest to keep him alive. We didn't think he was going to survive. And they said when he did survive and we saw him again, because they still see him. He goes back to visit regularly. And so when we saw him again, we thought, this is our reason. This is why we do what we do. That one person you think is not going to survive and you just keep on working on them because they just might. Brandon was that person.
Yep. You got it. And you know what? I don't think people take enough time to sit down and thank their first responders. I mean, I know that some first responders get thanked, but there are so many that, when there's losses, they don't get the thank you for trying. They don't get the, thank you for being there and showing up when you did, because it's a loss and people get consumed with their grief. And even though there's a part of the grief that had to happen, even for your mother, Brandon, she had to grieve the loss of the child she knew at one point that now is different, but embraces who you are now. And she's grateful that you're here. There is still a process. And so how do you go back? And even though sometimes people, they're forgotten, it's like, they don't go back and say, thank you for saving my child. And thank you for doing everything you could to keep him here. Even if he's different, he's still mine and he's still here and he still gets to experience all of the different things, maybe differently. I mean, here's the great thing, Brandon, is that on some level, kind of like an ignorance is bliss, which means that now you have a portion of your brain that kind of goes, I don't really care about that. And I'm going to tell you what I think. And that's just how it goes, brass tacks. Some people would say, oh, that's inappropriate. I'm like, you get to live your best life because you have no real censorship. So you get to just say how you feel in that moment without worrying about it.
Yeah.
But there are repercussions sometimes. Things do
happen.
People being sensitive, Pam.
Yeah, well, there's certainly in social situations, you can certainly feel the impact of that in certain social situations.
Oh, of course you can.
Being asked to leave establishments.
But yeah, I gotta keep that up. I went to meet the Flames because I want to tell my story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I gotta keep that up a casino, right? I want to tell my story, right? Because Johnny Joe died. I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through. And I get that for that reason, but I'm going through that right now.
We're going through, yes.
Well, it's all good. I'll get by it. And hopefully, I'll figure that stuff out. I'll be sure out soon. So I move forward to that.
That's good.
I just don't want anyone to go through what I've been through, right? I'm passionate. I remember when I Flames games, a few Flames games. And I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through, right? So, and then I went to the Flames, meet the Flames, and tell my story. One guy's like, yeah, you already showed me that. I'm like, okay, well, should we do it again? Because John Control died from drunk driving, right? And the guy looks like John Control. Morgan Frost is his name. Exactly like John Control. And the guy says, yeah, I don't want to see that. You should see it because I died from drunk driving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want them to go through what John went through, right? That's why. It's very, very serious, right?
Yeah.
My job, right? My job now.
I think it's a great job to be able to speak and tell your story because you don't want other people to go through the same thing. I think that's great. And I think that everybody that embraces your story and who you are and your mother and those around you that want to help advocate and tell your story and that you survived this when the odds were against you, they're just, I think that that's a great thing because there should be more people that support these types of stories to say, yes, this happened. Yes, it was a catastrophe, but let's talk about how it happened and how it could have been prevented and that he is still here beating the odds and celebrating the people that were there for him in that time. So all of his first responders that were there, and also celebrating you, Pam, that stood by him and made sure that your son was able to go home and probably pushed him and made sure to let him know that he could do it. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. If it's too much today, that's okay. We're going to wait and we're going to try it again tomorrow. And Pam, the fact that you relive this every time you tell the story, you're such a brave woman. And Brandon has got quite the personality on him and he is very funny. And yes, I have noticed that he sometimes will say things out of what people would say out of turn. But to me, I just think he's funny. I'm like, meh. But I have a little brother that, he has a handicap. He's got quite a few of them. He was born like that. So I guess for me is that I've always had to kind of hone in and pay attention, really pay attention, which is funny because his birthday was yesterday, Brandon. So, and he just turned 39. So yeah, I will tell him. I actually have to FaceTime him. I didn't have a chance to FaceTime him yesterday. My mom was all like, Lisa, are you going to FaceTime? And I was like, I don't have time right now. And I didn't have time, but I know where my little brother is. So I go too many times. So now I've got time today, right after I get off the phone with you. I actually tried to talk to her before I got on the line with you. And then she was busy. So I'm going to call her afterward and FaceTime my little brother. So how old are you turning now, Brandon? You're going to be 30 what? 32. So this happened when you were in your early 20s.
No, I'm old.
No, you see it happened when you were in your early 20s. He was 21.
Yeah, 21 now.
21.
That's right.
Just turned 21.
21, so much more.
You should have been in Vegas.
No, good. No.
Has he gone anywhere outside, like other than Canada? Has he gone anywhere else?
We went to Las Vegas last year.
Yeah.
He had traveled before his car crashed a bit, but we went to Las Vegas last year for a little getaway.
Yeah,
nice.
It was interesting. And I saw a guy running naked.
Yeah, we were just walking down the street. This guy went streaking past us. Oh, didn't realize that was okay here. And next thing we heard some.
I said to Mom, Mom, I didn't know I did that was legal in Vegas. And as soon as I said that, cops were racing down, right? And at first I said, yes, bye.
Yeah, I saw lots of interesting things in Vegas.
Well, you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Vegas. Yeah. That's right.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast, telling your story. It is such a compelling story, Brandon. And I think you're a pretty amazing guy to do all the things that you do. So keep doing all of the amazing things. And you've got an incredible mom sitting right beside you. And trust me, she will make sure that your story gets told all the time. Okay. And that your voice will be heard the way you need it to be heard. So I mean, keep leaning on each other. I think you're a great inspiration to mothers and to sons out there to make sure you're making proper choices and paying attention to who's who in the zoo and not focusing heavily on who's to blame for everything. There's always that moment, but you don't hold on to the blame factor. You hold on to what happened and basically how you maneuvered through all of it and stayed strong in yourself. You have to have a strong psyche, Brandon, in order to get through what you've been through and keep going, to get up and try, to get up and walk, to get up and talk. Every morning is not an easy day, but I'm sure even if you wrote yourself a journal or you talked a journal or you had someone write a journal of all the things you went through, that you could pass it on. You should make a story about it. I really believe
we have a video journal, really, because I took pictures and videos of pretty much all of it, and it's remarkable where he came from and where he is today.
The guy actually told me to make an audiobook. Make an audiobook about my story.
It's awesome. It's an awesome story. I love it. But it was funny because we were trying to get together, Pam, beforehand, and I was like, Brandon, what's happening? And he's like, oh, I decided to go to McDonald's instead. And I was like,
oh God, yeah, right.
I laughed.
Seriously?
I was like, and then I called my producer and I was like, yeah, we don't need to worry about the podcast. He decided he was going to go grab a bite and you got to eat. So I'm good with it. And I'm like,
he's talking about you so much. Mom, you got to meet Lisa. Mom, you got to talk to Lisa. Mom, Lisa wants to do my podcast, wants to be on her podcast. You have to meet Lisa, Mom, So he was really quite excited to do this, Lisa. So Thank you for making time and space in your calendar.
He told me that it was his birthday and that when he booked it, he said, I'm booking it on my birthday. So the time he booked off, I booked out my calendar so that if there was any type of technical issues, if there was anything else you want to talk about, I made sure that he had at least an hour to kind of get everything figured out. So an hour up and above. So he was booked for 2:30. I made sure I was closed out till 4, just in case there was any type of tech issues or anything. So I was totally cool. When you're like, oh, we're having an issue, I'm like, no problem.
I forgot about actually. 4 times I looked at my phone 2:30 because you know what I told you.
You reminded me earlier.
Yeah, but I asked Lisa what time was it, right?
Oh yeah, it's time.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
sometimes we forget about things. That's why we have reminders. That's why I put reminders on things as well. So don't worry about it. I'm glad you guys had a chance to come and chat with me at Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. And, keep doing all of the wonderful things that you're doing. I think your story is amazing and needs to keep being said. So thank you again for being on the show with me.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm honored. Thank you very much.
No problem, Brandon. Thanks, Pam.
And thanks, Mom, for being on the podcast with me, Mom.
Okay, everybody. And as for next time, I guess we'll be on again, and you guys will hear the segment for Hard Hats and Hard Truth that will come out tomorrow. And catch you guys on the flip side, and don't do anything crazy.
Don't you